back to another episode of Search It Up with Sienna, the web series where I use IMDb to discover and talk about all different types of movies and TV shows, and how the people in front of and behind the camera not only make it all possible, but are somehow all interconnected. I talk directly with the talent about their backstories and experiences on and off set, and what they're up to today. On my last episode, we talked about the movie Freaky Friday with editor Bruce Green. Bruce Green also edited the TV movie Family Ties Vacation. So today, we're going to be talking about Family Ties. And joining me today is composer and musician Tom Scott, who composed the Family Ties theme song. Family Ties is a 1980s TV series about the Keaton family. The wife, Elise, the husband, Stephen, and their kids, Alex, who's very ambitious, and Mallory, Jennifer, and of course, later on, Andy. I love the show so much. I recently started watching it and I instantly fell in love. Every time I watch the show, I always walk away singing the theme song. What do we do, baby, without us? It has such a fun tone to it. But I wouldn't be singing it right now if it weren't for Tom Scott. Tom is a composer, arranger, producer, music director, saxophonist, and educator. He has had 13 Grammy nominations and 3 Grammy Awards, and has worked with Barbra Streisand, Quincy Jones, the Blues Brothers, Frank Sinatra, Aretha Franklin, and Aerosmith. His movie and TV credits include Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, Uptown Saturday Night, Stir Crazy, Starsky and Hutch, and Beretta. He has served as musical director for the Academy Awards, the Emmy Awards, and Comic Relief, and so much more. And now, without further ado, here's my interview with Tom Scott. What interested you in the music business? Did you start with learning to play an instrument?
Right. Well, first of all, my parents, both musical, met when they both worked at NBC Radio. This is in the 1940s, during World War II. They met at NBC Radio on Sunset and Vine Streets in Hollywood, and they got married about 3 or 4 years later. My father was a music director at NBC Radio. He was arranged and composed and conducted there. And then when they got married, my parents moved to the San Fernando Valley, where my sister and I were raised. And during that time, he wrote music for the original Dragnet series. I don't know whether you've seen that one on classic TV. It's the black and white one from the 50s. The Dragnet has a famous television theme that goes dun 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 dun, like that. And although my dad didn't write that, but he wrote much of the underscore, for the accompanying all the scenes and everything. For some time, he went on to write episodes of Twilight Zone, Wagon. I don't know how many of these shows you know, but I'll name them anyway. Twilight Zone, Wagon Train, Laramie, and Lassie. For the last 12 years, it was on the air. So there was a lot of music in my house. But my father wasn't the one who inspired me to start playing. In the 4th grade, I guess, I would have been, 8, something like that, 8 or 9. This lovely old lady, Mrs. Todd, came to the class and said that she was forming an orchestra to rehearse on Wednesday morning. We didn't have one, I guess, until that point. And she said, there's a bunch of musical instruments you can rent very inexpensively. And so I thought, why not? Although I liked folk music and stuff, I played a little ukulele before that. And
I played at ukulele too.
Yeah, I liked Elvis Presley, and I liked folk music, folk singers. But I wasn't really, I wasn't inspired to take up the instrument I eventually ended up with until I got this offer to miss the Wednesday mornings, to get to leave class and go play the orchestra. So I went home to my dad, and we decided on a clarinet. And I rented a clarinet, and this was 1957, something like that, for $5 for the whole semester. It's a good deal.
Yeah, I did band 1 year in my school, and I remember the instruments. Luckily, my mom played the flute, which is what I chose to do. When she was around my age, and maybe in high school, but I'm not sure. And we were able to repair it for not as much money, but the people who were renting it, it's definitely gone up from $5.
I'm sure. I'm sure. But anyway, so then my dad, wanting me to have the best possible influence, bought me a record by the guy that was considered, and probably still is, one of the great clarinet players of all time, a guy named Benny Goodman. And he bought me a concert of the Benny Goodman. He was known as the King of Swing back in the 30s. I just fell in love with jazz, particularly. And then that led to saxophone. And by the age of about I think my first gig, I think, was playing saxophone at a country club with some of my high school, junior high and high school friends. I think I made $15, and it was like it could have been $1,000 because I'm actually getting paid to do what I love. And so that I had a 10-year reunion at my high school class, 10 years after we graduated, and
Mhm.
people came up to me and said, "You were the one who always knew what you wanted to do." And I never thought about that much because with me, it was just normal. But I realized, and still realize, that many people in high school don't know what their ultimate career path will be. So I was very lucky in that sense, and I've never looked back.
And how did you get started as a musician and then composer for film and TV?
By the age of 16, actually, I was approached to write. I did. I wrote my first film score at 16. It was a film for California educational schools. Um, and they didn't have much money. I think that's why I got the gig. They'd heard that I would wrote music, and it was a film about automated egg processing in 1960 or whenever that was.
Mhm.
Probably pretty primitive by today's standards, but there was an automated thing. They'd put the eggs in this thing, belt, and it would go, and they needed music underneath. So I brought a little band, about 5 or 6 of my friends, and recorded my first, compositional score for a movie. So it started young, and I did my first solo album. I was playing in a big band, and the producer, who owned a record company called Impulse Records, came up to me one night and said, "Hey kid, you want to make a solo record for me?" And I was like, "Sure." I mean, I wasn't looking, that wasn't my goal, but apparently my talent and my hard work had paid off in a way where I was been invited to make an album. And since then I made about 35, or I don't know how many exactly, because they reissue some, at least 35 original albums. But what I brought to the table was, and they're always looking for like, what's the contemporary thing, so in those days I was contemporary. I was the new thing, and I brought this kind of rhythm, uh, section beat to the underscore. So I got a lot of work on shows like Streets of San Francisco, Barnaby Jones, Starsky and Hutch. I wrote the theme for Starsky and Hutch, Beretta. All these are all cop shows that were so popular at the time. There's still some on now, but and then I was off to the races.
And you were the composer for Family Ties, and created the theme song. How did that job come your way?
Okay, right. Now the story you want begins. Okay. Here's the deal. By that time, that was 1982, I think. Family Ties. I had an agent who was a guy who solicited my services for film and television shows. I had done those, as I told you, those cop shows in the '70s, and a
Yeah.
couple of movies, and I was doing well in that way. So he calls me one day and he says, "Listen, I've recommended you for a show. It's a comedy, and I must set this up a little bit because, see, Family Ties was kind of a revolutionary show in terms of the premise of the show, because in previous years, during the hippie, I guess you'd call it, there was a big young people revolution. Some of it protesting the Vietnam War, but some of it, smoking marijuana, and it was a whole culture that kind of evolved around this new teen thing, and the music and the rock music, and it was all a kind of a cultural thing. And so, typically, the parents of a typical American family were more conservative, old fashioned, and the kids were more hippies and wild, and wanted to had a more of a, I don't know, loving kind of a attitude about the world. This show was an attempt to flip that on its head and make the parents kind of like from that hippie revolution, although they weren't, but they just had a peace loving kind of sort of philosophy that younger people had earlier, and the son especially is the conservative one. So
Yeah.
they did a reversal there, which made for some great comedy. It was very funny, and my agent said, there's this show. He explained that to me and said they want you to write a theme, and they want to pair you with a a lyric a producer and lyricist. Two of us went to a meeting with the producer, Gary David Goldberg,
Mm-hmm.
and he explained to us what he wanted. He wanted a tune that kind of summed up the feelings of the show, the attitude of the show. So Jeff and I went our separate ways and decided, like, we'd separately work on something. He'd work on a lyric and I'd work on a tune, and then we'd call each other and get together. So he called me very short, I think the next day, and he said, "Listen, Tom, not only have I written the lyric, most of it, but I think I've written what is the melody as well." I said, "Really? Well, what is it?" He says, "Well, it's called 'What Do We Do Without Us?'" I said, "Oh, that's kind of a cool, title." So he says, "I haven't done the middle part yet, but here's how it goes. What do we do without us? What do we do without us? So something da 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 da. What do we do without us?" And I said, "Let me work on it a little bit." So so I took his idea and I added baby in the middle of what do we do, and so that created a new kind of a flow to the song, and then of course I wrote a new melody and new chords, and we got together the next day, and I played it for him. He said, "Oh, I love it, I love it." He wasn't offended that I had altered his original ideas, and then so and so he finished the lyric. I think we basically finished it up. It happened pretty fast, really, because again, it's a minute long. I mean, listen, compared to the TV themes today, that's like an epic.
Yeah.
It's like a large novel, because and you may not know this, but the reason that TV themes, see, those classic ones, you'll never have those again. And what killed it was the advent of the remote control. As soon as you gave people the ability to change channels from their seats without getting up, you know, that told the networks that, look, we got to hook these people into our plot of whatever show it is right away. We can't spend time with a 60-minute every week the same opening, because people will click away. So the main titles got shorter and shorter. In fact, some shows start with the episode itself, like right, and then you'll see a little bit of like 10 seconds, maybe 15 at the most, of a main title, and that's it. So I appreciate being kind of having participated in what I think is kind of the golden age of TV themes. When themes really had some substance, there was time enough to give them some substance. So we took our theme to Gary Goldberg, and he loved it. We did a session. The show went on the air, and it languished the first year. It wasn't that it was medium in the in those days there were, like, I don't know, 89, 90 primetime shows, and they would rate them from 1 to 90, and they were like 50s, 60s. They were not in the top anything. And two things happened that changed the fortunes of the Family Ties show. The following summer, after that first year, Michael J. Fox made a little movie called Back to the Future.
Yeah.
And the other thing was that when we came back on the air, there was a new show on. I guess we were on Tuesday nights, I think, on NBC. So we were on at 8:30, but the show that preceded us was a little comedy called The Bill Cosby Show. Now, Bill Cosby, in those days, we all loved him. He's had some terrible, terrible things found out about him since. But in those days, he was one of the most popular, Well, that show went because he was already popular, so that show rocketed to the top right away, and people ended up staying on Channel 4 and got into our Family Ties, and they discovered, oh, this is a pretty good show. So we were launched into the top 10 that second year, and stayed there for 3 or 4 years, I think. I don't remember exactly, but I do remember I got some trophies. I don't know where they are, but anyway, from the outfit that collects royalties on behalf of us composers, BM Broadcast Music Incorporated. That's my organization that I belong to, and every year they'd have like an awards dinner, and I always walked away with one of these plaques.
At what point in the production did you get involved? Was it before the pilot?
Hmm. But yeah, I don't think. Well, here because it must have been after the pilot because in order to be given the money, in this case from Paramount, the Paramount shows, Paramount Television, in order for them to give Gary David Goldberg, the creator of the show, the full amount of money to hire all composers and things and all of that, they had to do a pilot, probably kind of bare bones budget. So it probably didn't even have music because what they're trying to sell is not the whole show with the theme and everything, but just the idea that this show with this idea and these characters is a good idea. It's something Paramount TV, should put on the air because it's that good.
The theme song is so memorable. And why do you think it sticks to this day?
Well, you know what? Let me put it to you this way. In those days, it's all different now with cable and everything, but in those days, as I said, there were like prime time, which was considered 8 to 11 p.m. That was gold. To get a show anywhere in prime time, you were doing and have it stay there for any length of time. That was real victory. So out of the 90 shows on the air, usually there would be about 15 that would have failed the previous year and would be taken off the air. So now there's 15 slots for a new show, and something like 100 pilots are submitted to the networks. So it's really lucky. I mean, because I could tell you, I have written pilot episodes for television shows that I thought were great, who never made it on the air. Jeff Barry, after the success, I guess after the second year of Family Ties, he thought maybe we could parlay the song which you said is memorable. Thank you very much. He would go to Columbia Records because he'd had some previous success with them, and propose that we do a new version of Family Ties with two of their solo artists, which happened to be Johnny Mathis and Denise Williams, two very popular song singers at that time. And so we went into the studio and re-recorded the theme from Family Ties with them, and a brand new session with all the different musicians, and that went on the air for the remainder of the show. I forget how long it went, 5 or 6 seasons, I guess, or whatever it was. So there was actually two. There was the original theme, and then the Johnny Mathis, Denise Williams theme.
Did you work with the director and the producer at all?
The producer was the guy that in what we call sitcoms, situation comedies like that one. The directors change like every week. The director doesn't have that kind of show. The producer's the person who has the control, and that was Gary David Goldberg. So he was once he gave us the go ahead. We're in. It's just that one guy to please him. Yeah.
Can you talk about what else your role involved with the show? Was there anything else that you did in the show?
Well, yeah, actually there is, because I am a saxophone player. The end title was an instrumental version featuring me playing the melody of Family Ties on the saxophone.
I remember the saxophone part.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah. And is there a difference between composing music for animation versus live action?
Well, look, let me put it to you this way. Every assignment and every piece of music that's required in a scene in a single assignment has its own rules, carries its own rules. I just did a documentary for some of the music for a documentary that's going to be on HBO, featuring a guy named Super Dave Osborne. He was a crazy, wacky guy, very funny, and he's passed away recently, unfortunately. So they did this kind of tribute to him. But in that show, I had to write music from the 1930s, and some rap music and some everything. So you got to look at the piece of film that they want you to write music to, and say, how is music gonna, what can I do to make this scene better? And you try your best writing music for animation or live action, whatever the situation is. Is it a love scene? Is it a chase? Is it a argument between two people? Is it violence? Is it love scene? Whatever it is, you gotta let that scene, move you. Because there's no formula. I mean, you don't last very long if you go, okay, well, this is what I do, and I'm going to do it no matter what. Boy, that won't should get fired real fast if you do that. You got to be flexible, and you got to have a wide palette of knowledge. I think about to be really good to know what the possibilities are and have command of the language. Composing music is a language. It just is. You've got to know all your notes and your chords and how melodies work and how orchestration. What happens when you put this instrument with that instrument? How does that sound? All that stuff. So there's a whole body of knowledge that you've got to have command of, and then you use it one scene at a time to apply to whatever the requirements are. I did a cartoon. I really enjoyed it. Goofy, the character from Disney,
Yeah.
the dog. Oh, he talks like that. I did a Goofy cartoon once, and it was really, really fun. Except I never saw it. It was actually for movies, for theaters, I mean. And I asked them eventually I called my film agent who had gotten me the job. And I said, what happened to that Goofy movie I did? He said, oh, well, they changed the administration at Disney for the animation. And they decided that from an animation standpoint, that Goofy was too old fashioned. So they threw the whole thing out. And I
Uh,
was like, oh man, I wanted so badly to say that I wrote the music for a Goofy cartoon. And my agent says, Tom, did the check clear? Did you get paid? Well, yes, I did. So they could do whatever the heck they want. They could pay you to write as much as you want and then throw it all away as long as they pay you.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You've done such a range of iconic movies and TV shows in different capacities. From Starsky and Hutch.
Skin Hut.
I'm sure I might
Right.
working today. To Footloose, and Ghostbusters, to Toy Story 3, and to the Emmy Awards. What is your most memorable project that you've worked on?
Oh man, boy, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
So many of them are memorable. Of course, I have a certain soft spot for having been asked by Quincy Jones and successfully been the music director for the Oscars, the Academy Awards in 1996. This is a year that a movie called Braveheart was the winner that year. And it was the same job I'd done for the Emmys. It's music direction. You have pieces of music you got to conduct and arrange and whatever you do. But of course, the world is watching when you're doing the Academy Awards. There's like a billion viewers, and it's all live. So there's a certain like, whoa, I gotta play I got my A+ game has got to be on. The good news about a show like that and all these award shows is that you do actually what you see on the air, and it's live, but it's the product of two prior entire run-throughs. So if there's any glitches or unexpected surprises, usually you can iron them out during either the run-through rehearsal or the dress rehearsal. So by the time you're on the air, you pretty well know what you're doing and how to get through it. But it is 3 hours on live television with a billion people watching. There's kind of a thrilling aspect to that.
Yeah, definitely. And you've worked with such a variety of talent. Is there anyone in particular who has inspired you?
Many, many, many people have inspired me. But first of all, I got to say my father, because he was beloved. And if you ever listen to music on Lassie, when it's on one of the the what do they call it, old TV show channels, um, classic television, they call it.
Mhm.
Uh, he wrote music for Lassie when Lassie was with a fire, what they call forest ranger. Sorry, he was with living with a forest ranger, and it's in color, most of it in color, as opposed to the earlier Lassies that were in black and white. And you can hear there's his music was so full of passion and heart. Uh, and he's the one who said to me, son, when you're writing, don't sit at the piano and try to figure it out. Listen, in your head, look at the scene and then envision what sound goes with that and try to get it to flow through you. And some days are better than others with that. I try to write things thinking that this is the best I can come up with. And then I wake up the next morning and I look at it into the trash, start over. I mean, that happens. My
Yeah.
dad said it all the time. He said, so some days are better than others, but on a good day, oh my God, it's almost like you can't get it on, committed, recorded quick enough because the ideas are just flowing great.
Yeah.
I wish I could explain that, but that's the magic of creativity, I guess.
Yeah, I get it.
So,
And do you have a favorite song? And I'm
I
sure
for,
you have so many, but is there like one that like in particular right now you like?
wow. It's very hard for me, because like in the last just year, for example, I've done several arrangements for singers and so on. I probably arranged 20 songs, and they come, I focus on them, I get my work done, I send them off, and then they kind of, I got to put them out of my head because the next thing's coming in. So I hate to say this in a way because it makes it sound like I don't care, but I don't listen to music for leisure much anymore because I'm so immersed in it all the time.
Yeah, I get what you
And
mean.
I love being immersed in music, but I'm not the best judge of whatever the greatest tune of is of the moment because
Mhm.
it's the last one I worked on.
If you were an instrument, what would you be?
Yes.
Why?
Wow. 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 That's like a Barbara Walters. Barbara Walters used to say to her interviewers, she was a famous interviewer. She used to say to actors and other people, she said, if you were a tree, what tree would you be? But you're asking me if I was an instrument. Well, I suppose, look, fate had it that I was destined to be a saxophone player. So I guess I'd have to go with the saxophone.
Uh-huh.
Just because it's provided me with not only a comfortable living but so much joy, and I've been able to interact with so many fantastic musicians. Some of them are on the wall back here: Carole King and Joni Mitchell and Steely Dan, Barbra Streisand, and on and on and on. And I think that makes it a really really good instrument for me to aspire to be.
Mhm.
And I know you now have a really cool podcast and you are on TikTok. And I've checked it out and it's really cool.
Heavy.
Can you talk about some is there any other like current projects that you can talk about that you're working on?
Right now, let's see. As I say, this HBO documentary about Super Dave Osborne. Bob Einstein was his real name, but he had this hysterical show called Super Dave, where he imagined himself like a daredevil, and he would pretend to do all these ridiculous stunts, like ride a motorcycle off a bridge, and then he'd end up just like in pieces at the bottom. Actually, on this thing he says he loved all the Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner and all those cartoons where animals get completely
Yeah.
done in, and of course they're okay at the end. So that's kind of what he did. He did a live cartoon where he's always getting beaten up or falling or oh my gosh, it's so funny. So that was fun. That'll be on the air, I think, next month, I believe.
Mhm.
And right now I have a couple of assignments of people who want me to play on their records. Because I'm fortunate I could record here at my home and send it on. People send me stuff. Of course, at the same time, I've got more podcasts to do, more TikToks to do. I've got a radio show on KJazz. A Tuesday at 9 o'clock. I have an hour on KJazz where I play a variety of jazz, old and new, from the 30s all the way to this current year. And so I'm staying busy. I have a busy life, and every day I get up. I'm 73, and I still get up and go. I can't wait to get into what I do because it's fun.
Yeah, that's a good thing. And I think it's
It's a very good thing.
yeah, definitely. Well, I had so much fun talking to you, and I learned a lot about not only family ties, but a bunch of other different things that you do. And it was really interesting, and I had a lot of fun talking to you.
Well, Sienna, I'm delighted to meet you. You're a lovely young lady, and I know that you have a marvelous life ahead of you because you're curious, you're very friendly, and these are great qualities to have.
Thank you.
Bless you. You're most welcome. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you so much, Tom. It was so fun hearing about your experience with music in film and television and in general. And now, before we switch it up, here's a quick fun fact. Did you know that Michael J. Fox met his wife Tracy Pollan on the set of Family Ties? And they have been married now for over 30 years. And now it's time to search it up. Let's see. Oh, Patty Duke was in a Family Ties episode as May Keaton. She was also in the 1979 TV movie Miracle Worker, starring Melissa Gilbert. So next week, we're going to be talking about The Miracle Worker and Little House on the Prairie. See you then!